ADHD Experts webinar series from Attitude Magazine. This is our weekly series. Welcome to all of you listening in today. I know many of you, I am sure, are women with ADHD who are here today to hear our super special guest speaker, Terry Matlen, talk about the secret lives of women with ADHD, or what no one ever told you or asked you about your own ADHD. I don't need to tell all of you, we all know it better than anyone, that ADHD is a gender-neutral condition, and yet boys are still diagnosed 3 to 4 times more often than girls and women. We are much more likely to have the distracted, quiet, easy to dismiss symptoms of inattentive ADHD. And what happens to undiagnosed girls? They end up with low self-esteem, with anxiety, with even depression. And we tend to believe that all of our symptoms are personal faults. And once women with ADHD get a diagnosis, then they just, frankly, just feel overwhelmed. Terry Matlen, our guest today, is a therapist, a writer, a coach, a consultant, and she is got a super set of survival tips for women with ADHD, a special focus on women with ADHD. And she's the author, by the way, of 2 great books that I recommend to all of you. One is called The Queens of Distraction, and the other is called Survival Tips for Women with ADHD. She runs a website called addconsults.com, and she is here to share some really useful information today, information about how to understand what it means to live like a woman with ADHD, how to let go of all the expectations and the shame and the embarrassment that surround us, how to balance homework, relationships without feeling guilty about your shortcomings or your perceived shortcomings, how to remember the important stuff, and just lots more. So thank you so much for joining us today, Terry. We're always happy to have you join us. Let me just give you a very quick webinar. I don't know if many of you are new to our Attitude webinars, how they work. Post your questions in the box in the screen on your right, your control panel, at any time while Terry's speaking or afterwards. As soon as she finishes her slide presentation, she'll answer as many questions as time permits. If you have problems hearing us, the trick is to dial in with your phone line and not to rely on your internet connection. If you'd like to take notes while Terry's speaking, you may download the slideshow presentation now from the control panel on your right. It's in the download section. It's a PDF. Or if you want to wait until after the session ends, you'll find a whole replay of this webinar, including the presentation, the slides for download, on the Attitude website, attitudemag.com/webinars, where, I might add, you'll find lots of other great webinar replays there as well. So with that quick introduction, let me turn it over to Terry. And welcome, Terry. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Susan, thank you so much for inviting me. I always love doing projects with you and with Attitude Magazine, and you guys do such a great job, so thanks for having me. I'm going to launch right into the presentation because I know I don't have a whole lot of time to talk because I want to be able to hear questions from the audience. So let's get going. You already know the title of my session, and I'm trying to advance the slide, and why isn't it advancing? I don't know. Okay, Stuart, I need your help. I'm using the keyboard to advance, and I can't advance the slide.
Click your cursor inside the frame for the slide.
I'm doing that.
And then try the. If not,
it's not moving.
Okay.
Which is weird because it did just a few minutes ago when we were playing around.
I will advance them. You tell me when to. Next slide.
Okay, next slide. So this is me and my daughter. I want to have a full disclosure here that, this is fine, that I have ADHD and my younger daughter in this picture has ADHD. And Susan already told you where I am, what I do. I have the 2 books that I hope you'll take a look at, and I run the 2 sites, ADD Consults and Queens of Distraction. And below you can see I've done a lot of work with the different organizations, nonprofit. So let's go on to the next slide. And we're not going to read this because I want to get into the discussion. But you'll see this is what we're going to cover today. So let's just jump into the next one. And let's start off with just a little bit of humor because we're going to be talking about a pretty heavy topic today. So this is my ADHD checklist, and this is not a valid screener. But if you answer yes to 5 or more of these, then maybe you do have ADHD, and maybe it's time to get diagnosed if you haven't already been diagnosed. So maybe you're a woman whose gray roots are usually showing. You've learned the fine art of nodding while smiling because you can't follow conversations at parties. That's me for sure, both of those actually. Okay, Stuart, next one. I'm making you work, Stuart. You're unable to fold sheets. I cannot fold a fitted sheet for the life of me. You find out you have 3 copies of a Dummy's Guide to Organizing. This is very true for me. I didn't realize at the bookstore that I already had one. I went back to the bookstore, got a second one, not realizing that I had actually now 3 Dummy's Guides to Organizing. So, you know, reading these can be kind of funny when we talk about this as a group because, yeah, you know, we have 5 bottles of ketchup in the pantry and yet we keep buying more. And it is kind of funny. But sometimes, you know, when you really think about these things, you go home, you're alone, and not, you know, maybe these aren't quite as funny as they were when you're talking with the group and with me today. So even though this is humor, I think this can touch a lot of people's hearts in a deep kind of way. So on to the next slide. How did we get this far? I wish I could advance it for you, Stuart, but I can't. It's just not working. There we go. How did we get this far, and how far do we need to go? Well, ADHD really has only been recently understood in adults, let alone in women, since about the mid-1980s. I know when I was being diagnosed, gosh, I think it's about 20 years ago now, there was only one book out there on adult ADHD. So even though it seems like we know a lot, we really don't. We still have a long way to go. And the people that you want to study, to read about, are Terry Matlen, Dr. Patricia Quinn, Dr. Ellen Littman. These are all contributors in the field that you need to know, these people, so that you can further get an understanding of just how ADHD plays out in adults, but more so in women with ADHD. And my take on this is, I think that the core problem is, and this is what Terry Matlen talks a lot about in her work, is societal expectations that from the time we're young girls, we're taught, you know, you need to know how to do laundry, you need to know how to keep a house, you need to know how to take care of children, you need to know how to do all of these things. And now in more recent years, on top of that, having a career and a full-time or part-time job. So we internalize these societal expectations. And if we feel that we don't measure up to these, then we often, as Susan mentioned just now, we can develop a real sense of failure and shame. And I really think it's a number that we do on ourselves, but it's not purposeful. It's because of how we've been raised and how we see ourselves as women in this community, in this society. So we need to get to a point of acceptance and begin focusing on our strengths. But again, I think more research is needed, especially, I think, in the area of hormones, the woman with ADHD who's aging, addictions, and then comorbidities where we see ADD plus. So we see ADD with depression, anxiety, all that sort of thing. So let's go on to the next slide.
Terry, try it again.
Okay.
There you are.
Oh, did I do it? No, yeah, no. Oh, it's working now. Is that you or me? Okay. So let's go, yeah, if that's me, it's working now, Stuart. I don't know if that's me or you. So let's start. Oh, now I'm lost. Let me go back. Okay, so I think I know how to do this. Very good. Okay, it's working. So the inner experience, our secret lies shame and embarrassment. So what we need to do is, now I'm kind of thrown off here, so let me get myself back. It's time to let go of our internalized societal expectations because it's caused such shame, that feeling that we don't measure up at home, at work, with our parenting. And so then that causes embarrassment and low self-esteem, and then worse, as I keep repeating, causes oftentimes depression, anxiety, substance abuse, and that sort of thing. Okay, so what we need to do is start ditching the shame. Now that really sounds easy. I'm sure many of you, especially those of you who are new to your own ADHD and learning about it, you might be sitting here now thinking, well, I'm just a loser. I just don't have it together. So this is not something that happens quickly or overnight by any means. It took me quite a while to unload that shame and realize that ADD is not a character disorder or a sign of weakness or a character or a personality disorder. It's a true medical condition, and I hope that all of you keep that sentence in your head forever, that this is a true medical condition, not a personality flaw. And I think we need to know that we're not alone in this. I know that I don't know how many are on the call today, but I know a lot of you signed up. And that tells me that there's a real need for understanding not only our ADD, but beginning to share with other people, other women especially. It's really important to share these experiences and the challenges that you face, because hearing others' experiences and stories will help to confirm your own feelings, and it'll help lessen your fear, your feeling of isolation, your fear, your sadness, and it offers hope in moving towards a healthier, happier life with your ADD. So it's really, really important to be with other women with ADD to help normalize your own daily struggles so that you'll see that you aren't alone. So going to things like what you're seeing right now, this webinar at Attitude, is helpful. I have a Facebook page for women with ADHD. You connect with other women from all over the world. There's over 2,000 women there, 24 hours a day, talking about their challenges, but also offering support to other women. There's the ADHD Women's Palooza that I just put on with my colleague, Linda Rogley. That's something that was a huge success because women are just craving to be together. And Sari Solden, I mentioned her earlier, she's going to have a festival, a Better Together Fest. Here, I live in Michigan, and she's not far from me in Ann Arbor, Michigan. If you want more information about that, you can contact me. But being together with other women who share the same challenges is really, really important. So generally, I do this session live, so I get to have live feedback as I'm talking, which I really love, that we can't do until later during Q&A. So I'm going to draw from the experiences I've had doing this session at many conferences like CHAD and ADA. So let's go to the next slide. It's working. So let's start talking about some of the common difficulties that we share. Let's talk about how ADD impacts the different areas of our lives, starting with, relationships, which I'm going to get back to. Here we go. So these are things that many of us are talking about as, really having an impact on our lives. Tuning out is a huge problem. We talk to someone, we may love this person, we may care about this person, we may be interested in this person, yet our brain causes us to tune out. Are we doing that on purpose? No. Is it our neurobiology? Is it how our brains are wired? Yes. What do we do about it? Well, it's not an easy thing to talk about in a short period of time, but one way is to find time to connect with these people that you find important in your life. So people like Melissa Orloff, who's written a book on relationships, Dr. Michelle Novotny, she writes about it. I have a chapter in my book on this. So finding time to connect by doing things that you both enjoy so that there's less of a chance of you tuning out, but offers you a way to connect. That's one way to improve your relationship. Because shame also comes into play with these failed relationships. We see it over and over again in relationships where there's someone, one or both, that have ADHD. And you might want to, if this is a real problem, for you to talk to a therapist, because maybe there's something that you're missing. Maybe you still need to work on esteem, or maybe you're choosing the wrong partner. So another problem, feeling left out. There's that fear of getting that foot in your mouth, saying the wrong thing, and again, feeling of being different. And we also often see social anxiety with ADHD. So one solution is to take baby steps. Initiate a conversation with someone that, maybe you do screw up, but it's not that big deal if you do. So one example would be when you go to the market, start a very short little conversation with the clerk and say, oh, how are you today? How's your day been? Just practicing some areas of discomfort until you're a little bit desensitized and it's not always such a problem for you. Arguments. Now, I ask you, sometimes women with ADHD get into arguments because it's a way of being stimulated. We seek out stimulation. We are unhappy if we're bored, so we find weird ways to get our brains really moving, and one of those in relationships is starting arguments or falling into traps with other people who incite arguments with you. So think about that. And then holding your own. We have often something called emotional dysregulation, which means we don't have a great handle sometimes on having control of our feelings. So we might have a quick outburst, even a tantrum, You know, we see tantrums in adults with ADD because we can't regulate our emotions too well. So that's often a problem. So find a way to discuss problems with this person later when you can calm yourself down. Just say, you know, I need to remove myself because I'm not feeling real good right now, but let's revisit this problem when we're both feeling calmer. Parenting is another major challenge for many of us women with ADHD. And when you're a mom with ADHD, there's about a 50% chance that one or more of your kids will have ADHD because it's a highly genetic disorder. Now, some people don't like calling it a disorder. They like to call it a condition or whatever, but I'm a clinician, so I'm going to call it disorder for now. So in our lives, we have all of these problems: commotion, mess, paying attention, boredom, because with children comes these kinds of situations. Next slide. There we go. Okay, there we go. So what can we do? Well, we can start by problem solving. Problem solving, removing yourself, picking your battles, starting off with problem solving. This can work if your kids are a little bit older, not little tiny kids, although it can work with young children too. It's stating the problem and working together instead of being the dictator. We get into this mode of just telling kids what to do all the time until there's this resistance and you're just fighting constantly with the children. So sometimes, posing it as a problem. The toys are all over the floor. What do you guys think we can do about handling this problem? Oh, well, let's make it fun. Let's see who can throw the toys in a box the quickest, and whoever does it the quickest gets to pick what you want for dinner. Making it fun and problem solving with your kids. There's a great book out, and this is an old book. I don't know how easy it is to find, but it helped me tremendously when my kids were very young. And it's called Children, the Challenge. And it's not specific to ADD, but it sure helped me. It's written by a guy named Rudolf Dreikurs. It's Dreikers. And I'm not going to get into that too much because maybe you can find it on your own. So let's move right into homework strategies, which again, in my family was a huge problem, because if you have a kid with ADHD, you know that getting him or her to sit down for a half an hour every night after dinner is like pulling teeth. And part of that is because both of you are exhausted. Medication probably is wearing off. That's something to discuss with your doctor, because there are medications that can last longer through the day into the night, which is when, as a family, you really need that kind of help. So homework strategies: getting a tutor, getting someone outside to help you. That could be a college kid, a high school kid. Removing yourself from that often is the way to go. And then listen before reacting. Again, we have this theme in our lives as mothers of just reacting, and that's part of our ADD too. So try and get into the habit of really listening to what your child is telling you. So let's go on to work. Another area of tremendous challenge for many of us. And one of the main problems I hear is being late to work every day. So what do? Well, we can use timers, we can use visual cues, we can plan ahead so it's not all of a last-minute thing. But I think one real specific tip is to start focusing on what time do you need to leave the house, not what time do you need to be at work. So if you have to be at work at 9, sometimes we focus on 9 o'clock, and then we're not getting out of the house at 8 o'clock. So start moving backwards from when you have to leave the house, not what time you have to be there. So I worked with a client once, and in 15-minute increments, we wrote down every step of her morning routine so she could get out of the house in time for work. So another problem is unfinished projects. One idea is to work with a work buddy, and you can only do this successfully if your work buddy is somebody who is understanding and is really trying to be helpful and not giving you toxic help, meaning he wants or she wants something in return for you helping them out. It's just a relationship of helping each other, staying on task, and that can be hard to do. And I urge everyone working outside of the home to use your planner and get it into a habit. It's really tough to stay in the habit of checking your planner throughout the day, not just once in the morning and once at the end of the day, but throughout the day. Check your planner. And then assign the times that are best for you to do the more difficult projects. So like if you're a morning person, clearly most of us with ADD seem to be night owls. So this is hard if you have to be at work early and you've got some projects you need to take on. Take on the ones where you're more mentally alert. So if are better at like 3 in the afternoon, then take on those difficult projects during that time. And then taking on the wrong jobs and the wrong career. This is a very common problem with women and men with ADHD. I think some of us feel that we're so afraid of failure that we don't take on what we really are passionate about. We take jobs that maybe don't really speak to our strengths as well as they could, and then we get dissatisfied and very bored. So think about those old tapes that are running through your head, again, talking about shame and low self-esteem and perceived or real past failures that did hold you back. It doesn't mean you have to continue sticking with a job that's not the right fit for you. And you might want to work with a career counselor. Now we have these great coaches who have special certifications in working with adults with ADD, and I can help you with that if you want to email me later at some point. So let's go on to the next slide. Meals. Now look at this perfect family. Look at this happy mom. Look at these 2 smiling children, and take a look at that table. I can tell you that in my family this has never occurred unless I served, chocolate cake and cookies for dinner, which of course doesn't happen. So this is what we perceive in our heads as what should be, but this is what our reality, at least mine, is. And that is oftentimes food is not on the table in time, things get screwed up, food is burnt, and I have to admit that in my lifetime I have never made a turkey. So this is fantasy for me, making a turkey, let alone a burnt one. I just have not done that. It's not easy for me, and that's why I like to talk about meals and why it's so hard, because this is one of my biggest challenges. But why so hard? Why is putting dinner on the table so difficult for us? Well, because it means that we have to plan, shop, follow steps in sequence, and time things. So why is that so hard? It's hard because all of us with ADHD have impaired executive functioning. What is executive functioning? Well, the easiest description of it for right now anyway is how do you get from A to B and from B to C? We have a problem, all of those things. Not only do we get distracted, but we sometimes don't know how to get from A to B. Even in things that seem like they should be simple, they're not simple for us. So some of the ways we can get through this is planning by using what I call POS cards. Those are plan or starve cards. I talk about it very deeply, thoroughly in my book, but in a nutshell, it's having index cards where everything is written out for you so that at least you don't have to remember what you need to make. You don't have to remember what items you have. It's all there written out on these cards. Having shortcuts in the kitchen, so it's okay to use bagged lettuce for your salad. It's okay to just run into the market and get a chicken that's already roasted for you and just throwing it on the table. So stop being so hard on yourself and trying to be that perfect mom that you just saw 2 slides back with the perfect family, because with ADHD it's not always easy or even possible. So let's get on to the big secret. Shame can cause us to hide and not even disclose our ADHD. And you know what? Sometimes it's okay not to disclose, which you might be surprised at me saying this after all these things I'm talking about being comfortable with your ADHD. But oftentimes it's not a good idea to say, I have ADHD, because it can cause lots of problems, because a lot of people still don't get it and will judge you, and it can put your job at risk. So instead of saying, I have ADHD, you might, I get distracted easily, I'm disorganized sometimes, I can't always tune out noise, I sometimes take on too much and don't finish what I start. But you can use other words to describe your strengths, because we are forgetting. We're so focused on our challenges and our weaknesses that we forget all of the strengths that we have. So to combat shame, we need to start thinking about these positive things. I'm creative. I'm a good friend. I think outside the box. These are all things that I see in women with ADHD across the board pretty much. I see so many of these positive attributes. So this is another area of difficulty where we're still stuck in that negative spin internally, and we need to get out of that. So reframing, like Dr. Ned Hallowell says, that creativity is impulsivity gone right. Well, what a great way to reframe some of our problems. I think of another way of saying what distractibility is. We think that that's a bad thing. Well, it's another way of saying I'm a curious person. I get distracted because these things are interesting to me when I look here and I look there. Well, yeah, it gets us into trouble, but you can also think of it in those terms. And organizing, this is what I get asked about so much because we, just 100% of us pretty much, I would guess, have difficulties with getting organized. It's another area that causes us much shame because we as women are supposed to have it all together at work, at home, with our family, and many of us are even too ashamed to have people over our house because of the mess, because of the clutter. So what I propose is be just organized enough. I didn't make that up. I got that again from Dr. Ned Hallowell, one of my favorite ADD experts, because he does the same thing in talking with people about getting rid of the shame and reframing it. So just being organized enough means, well, you know where important things are. You know how to, find this and that you need to have every day. But it doesn't mean your house has to be immaculate because most of us find that very difficult to do. So how can we, though, get some help with these things? Well, visual cues are really helpful for women and men with ADHD. So Post-its are my best friend. I have Post-its and bulletin boards all over, especially in my home office where I work, but also, in the kitchen and in the area where, when the kids come home from school. My kids are older now, but great place to have visual cues is where people are where they'll see them. So I also use a one notebook system so that I have one notebook and I never leave it. I never take it out because that's my second brain. And I keep Post-it notes next to every phone in my house so that if I get a phone call and it's important that I can't possibly, can forget, I need to stick that in my notebook that's in my home office so I can then deal with that when I need to. Timers, apps. Attitude Magazine has some fabulous articles on apps for people with ADD. I really urge you to check them out because we're in a digital age now. Everyone's carrying around smartphones, and these apps can be lifesavers. And I also advocate having messy zones in your house. It takes the pressure off of feeling like you have to have this perfect home. So in my house, my entire upstairs is my messy zone because I know I can't keep the entire house up myself. So that really helps me with, feeling that it's okay that certain parts of my house are messy. Another area, memory issues that women with ADD especially are so worried about. I'm trying to advance. Okay. And it does, ADD symptoms do typically worsen with age when you're a woman with ADHD because hormones make symptoms worse. The change in hormones, I should say. Estrogen levels drop. Dr. Quinn talks a lot about this, and she's more of the expert in this area. And so what happens is your working memory is not there as well as it used to be. When you meet somebody, 2 seconds later, you don't remember her name. You put something down, a minute later, you've forgotten where it is. So this is fairly normal as we age. And again, it causes embarrassment and shame. So one way to get around that is to start using humor. Again, this is not something that comes easily if you're new to your ADD. But for me, I now just joke about it. Say, well, that's my ADD kicking in, and I laugh. So the concerns about dementia and Alzheimer's are very strong for a lot of us getting older. And I can guarantee for most of you, this is not what's happening. It is most likely your ADD just getting a bit worse with age. If you're still concerned, then, really go talk to your doctor. But if it's a gradual thing, it's more likely to be your ADD. If you see a very significant change or someone around you says, well, you've really changed, your memory has gotten significantly worse, you don't remember how to use the dishwasher or whatever, then it is time to get that checked out. But in general, I wouldn't worry about it. Hypersensitivity is another area of a lot of concern for many of us, including me. It's a main problem, one of my main problems. And these are some areas that are very difficult. Too loud, things are too smelly, too hot, and all that sort of thing. These sensory issues can, again, cause us to feel different from other people. And you think, well, what the heck is wrong with me? Why is this a problem for me? Many women don't realize this is part of the package. This is part of our neurobiology, that we are hypersensitive to stimuli. And it's not always just stimuli like these things on the slide, but also internal things that we can be well, I hate to use the word hypersensitive. I hate that word, but we can feel things very, very deeply. So one way to, and I talk about this in depth in my book, is to develop a sensory room where you can get away when you are overwhelmed and calm yourself down. So I know I'm racing quickly, but I do want to have time to talk to you guys. As a matter of fact, it's really hard for me to talk without connecting. So let's breeze through the rest of this so that we can get into a more live situation with you guys. Oops, somehow that went too quickly. Unless someone is, all right, no. Hold on one second. Hold on, sorry about that. So what we want to do is the acronym EASE is to educate, accept, and simplify our lives and eliminate overcommitments. You know, how many of you have been asked by teachers, will you bake 3 dozen brownies for the soccer team? And we say yes. We say yes way too much. And I have a theory about that, but I don't have time to get into it. But what you can say is, you know, let me think about it and get back to you. Stop saying yes all the time. So we all, well, many of us have heard about IEPs for our kids who need that kind of help at school, but I suggest making ILPs for ourselves. An ILP stands for an Individualized Living Plan. I just made this up as a way to think about what can we do to make lives easier for ourselves? What kind of accommodations can we make for ourselves like we do for our kids in school, so that instead of fighting your symptoms, you start moving towards acceptance and using accommodations to make your life easier. So getting help with cleaning the house. If you can budget for having someone come in once a week or once a month to help you with these things that are just so difficult for us. Getting help with the kids, even if you're a stay-at-home mom, no reason why you can't have someone come in, take over watching the kids so that you can have some time out or getting out with a friend. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not a luxury. I keep repeating that in my groups. It's not a luxury to get accommodations in this way. Organizing. I hired a professional organizer to help me set up my home office. I simply could not do it. So remember, to get the extra help, it's no different if you had a physical limitation and you needed help for that, but ADD is invisible, so it's harder, but it's no less challenging. It's just harder for us to ask for help and accept help from others. And the more that you learn about your ADD, the better choices you'll make, and the less shame and anxiety you're going to have. So it's really important, and I haven't stressed this enough, but it's very important to get the proper treatment. How to find it, how to get the right people who are out there to help you. Make sure that you're getting, if you need medication, if it's recommended for you, making sure that you're on the right medication, and making sure that if you go for an evaluation, if you haven't, not go to someone who's going to only take 10 minutes to talk to you. A full evaluation can take hours and hours. So don't accept someone who says, oh, well, I can do this for, a half hour. It's not going to happen, at least not accurately. Acceptance, that's the first step in healing, is embracing your differences and focusing on your strengths. Again, education, learning more about ADD by coming to these kinds of sessions, by reading. It's really necessary to help your ADHD if you first understand it and then explain it to other people who are close to you. And then reframing what I've been talking about during the session. And ADD is just part of who you are. This is important for you to remember. It's not who you are, it's just part of who you are. And sometimes, you know what, it's okay to be different. You are the artists, you guys are the creative thinkers, you guys are the entrepreneurs, and you are the sensitive souls. We need people like you in our world and in our lives. So seek each other out. And once you get to that sense of acceptance, well, there's an incredible sense of freedom. And again, it doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen in a week or a month. It can take years of going back and forth to feeling shame and feeling really badly about yourself. But there will come a time, especially if you get some counseling around this, if this is a real big problem for you, that you'll get to this time in your life of acceptance and this wonderful sense of freedom. So I know I've kind of breezed through these things fairly quickly.
Sorry, that has been great. Yeah, thank you so much. Should I jump into the questions? I think we've got some, and you've got some fans on the webinar too. Krista says, Queens of Distraction, best book ever. I had no idea until I read this book. Thank you, Terry. So as you guys can see here who are listening, Terry's just a wide range of experience. And so I'm going to try to suggest to her some of your specific questions, which is probably going to, leave some things uncovered, but probably maybe work best in terms of the time we have left. I want to ask you a little bit about the shame and acceptance. You mentioned this, but a number of people on the webinar are asking about the contradiction between accepting ADHD and value it versus talking about it publicly. So Penny, for example's husband is very embarrassed by her discussing openly that she has ADHD. And Penny also experienced being let go from a job 2 weeks after she talked to her supervisor about getting help, organizing, prioritizing for problems she had with executive function. So what do you recommend? There's the acceptance, finding your people versus the public, I guess, is the tension. How do you handle that, and what do you recommend?
Well, I think the first step is what we talked about is that acceptance part, because until you're very, very comfortable with your own skin, meaning your own ADHD, all these other things can be very, very hard to deal with. So that's the very first piece, is getting help for yourself. And then these other situations you're talking about, if the husband is embarrassed by the woman's ADHD, then he has a real problem. It's not her problem. It becomes her problem, but that's his problem. And that means he doesn't really understand or value his partner for the strengths and wonderful things that are about her. And he's focusing on her challenges. Well, the woman can turn around and say the same thing to him. We all have challenges. Maybe he has a problem with drinking. Maybe he, everyone has their issues. So she can turn around and say, look, this is my challenge. You have your challenges. I'm not picking on yours. Why are you picking on mine? And this is a man who might benefit from a couple sessions with a couples therapy who understands, and this is the important part, that understands the ADD part of the relationship.
Right,
so
okay.
It eventually does become her problem. And then the disclosing, again, you have to be very careful.
Careful.
Yeah, you can lose a job for disclosing your ADD. That's a whole other topic with not much time for this one.
Yeah, I just thought it was important to point out, because we do see that a lot of attitude, and we do advise people to be very careful about, being open in the workplace. I think your advice was right on. Don't necessarily label yourself, but instead say, I need help with organization or whatever. Talk about your areas that you could improve, and not label yourself with something that so many people have such prejudice against. Turning to time management, a couple of things, I guess. Procrastination and setting priorities, big problems. A number of people on the webinar, women in the webinar, have brought up their problems with procrastination and time management. We have a little time. Maybe you can give some more thoughts on managing those.
There's one key thing that I think is really helpful, and this is what I do, so I'm hoping this will help you guys, is procrastination often means we don't know where to start. Everything becomes one priority on your to-do list. So what I find that helps is to go inward. We're so used to looking out and looking at the clutter, looking at the mess, and looking at the clock and this and that. And I find that if you start looking inward and listening to your body, what is making you feel really crappy right now? Is it that pile of laundry? Is it that you need to write a report for work? What is that one thing that if you could tick that off your to-do list will make you feel physically better and emotionally better? That's the thing to do. Is it that bill that you haven't paid, and if you don't pay it, the electricity will be turned off? Do the thing that's making you feel sick to your stomach. Do the thing that's giving you a migraine. So
we all know that thing is just ticking away in our brains. Yeah, that's a great recommendation.
I say go inward. We're not told that enough, in my opinion, because we're looking out all the time and thinking about, well, what are other people thinking about us? Another big problem. So that's my little gem is to start going inward, and how do you feel and what will make you feel better.
That's great. That's a really good tip. I loved your comment, your slide of the happy family in front of the perfect dinner. For me, personally, getting dinner on the table is a perennial nightmare. I can only describe it as thus. And I know you've written some articles for Attitude about having a plan for getting dinner on the table. And I thought maybe you could share some of those ideas with our listeners today.
Yeah, I mentioned the POS, the Plan or Starve plan, and what that is getting a stack of index cards and on each index card writing down on one side the actual meal. So it could look like roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and salad. And on the other side would be, oh God, I forgot now. On the other side would be the ingredients that you need to make that happen. So you might have a stack of 5. You might have a stack of 10 different options for dinners. So what this helps you do is, number one, it takes away the having to obsess, because we do obsess and ruminate as women with ADD. Like, what should I do? What should I do? Where do I start? That eliminates a few of our problems right there. And so let's say you're out at the grocery store and you have no idea what to do. You pull out a card, and you can also make notations and color code them. So let's say you know that you're not going to get home until 4. You have 1 hour to get this all pulled together. So you can make a little notation like a red star or something for an emergency dinner. So it would mean picking a red check card or whatever that is a very quickie. It's something that's ready-made at the market. Like I said earlier, a roast chicken already made, a bag of salad, and they even have mashed potatoes that are already made. So these will already, give you triggers for what your options are without having to think and freak out and worry about, because a lot of this causes, like you said, it was for me when my kids were young, every single day. I woke up every morning, and the first thing I thought of was, what should I make for dinner? That was my first thought. So those index cards, the plan or starve cards, really can be very helpful.
And if I remember, you suggested putting them on a ring and keeping them in your pocketbook so that, you could just stop at the grocery store and take one out and just buy the ingredients for that dinner, and it was all already planned. I thought it was really
get them
brilliant.
Laminated.
Yeah.
Get them laminated. And have 2 sets, one in the kitchen and one in your purse.
Yeah, really good idea. I mean, I think, Melissa here says, Blue Apron delivery service has been my lifesaver. It's like a prize that arrives every Wednesday.
And you know what? And that's
great.
Fine. You can afford it. I say do it. Stop the shame and the I should and I should stuff. Eliminate that from your vocabulary. If you can afford to do that, do it.
Yeah, and one of the things I love that Sari Folden says is, even if you spend all the money you earn hiring someone to do housekeeping, it's worth it. So that even if it's a break even,
I totally agree.
Because housework is just not something that most women with ADHD can do. Right. Melissa says, yes, exactly, no more shame. She's the Blue Apron person. No, and Tony says, how do I get my husband to accept ready-made dinners? I don't know if Terry can help you with that one. That's a tough one.
You ask him to help you cook.
That's a good one. That's a really good one, yeah. Let's see. I really totally second meal delivery from Anna. So, yes, pay for a housekeeper. So this is everyone sort of supporting each other with this. Let's see here. The planner. People always ask this question, and I'm not sure how it should be answered. They want to know what the best planner is. And, in my experience, and I'd love to know what you think, Terry, it's very personal. Some people do well with a notebook. Other people do well writing on their calendar. Some people, and in my case, I have 3 or 4 different things going on at once to try to keep everything together. But what's your advice on organization tools for time, I guess, time management especially?
Well, I totally agree with you that we're all searching, even I do, what'll work? What'll help me with this? And I try it, and maybe it works for a while, and then it doesn't after a while.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the problem,
That's mine too.
Yeah, part of our problem is, again, we can't handle boredom. We can't handle rote.
Right.
We can't
handle boring.
Yeah, we can't be bored. So there is no right answer. You have to try it. If you're a techie kind of person, then look for apps and online services that do this for you on your phone or on your desktop. If you're a paper kind of person, go for the paper. Don't go against what seems natural to you. That's the one thing I can advise. If you are a paper person, don't feel like you have to use your smartphone just because everybody else is. So explore and accept that sometimes at some point it may not work for you any longer. It means you're bored with the system and you need to find another system.
Yeah. People are chiming in with what works for them, and it's really interesting. A lot of people saying that they set audible reminders on their computer or their phone. No question that audible reminders are using those reminder services are really great.
Well, I'll tell you what I use. I'm at the computer a big chunk of my day, So I use, and I have an Apple, so I use that reminder thing that pops up, with the text.
Mm-hmm.
Because for me, because I hate visual distractions, if I don't take care of it, I'm going to be crazy. So it's a way to motivate me to get something done just because I hate seeing it on the screen.
Yeah. And here's a person who suggests taking a picture of your calendar or notebook if you use paper so you have it when you're out on your phone. That's really brilliant. That's really smart.
That's a great one.
And someone else who says she's a non-techie person and she thinks the Franklin Planner or the one-a-day two-pager. So I think it really comes down to, as you said, here's Helen who just said, how can you stop yourself from ignoring the audible reminders? Oh, my goodness. Exactly.
Jumping in your face.
Right.
With repeated reminders.
Exactly. Here's some, oh boy, I understand this one. I'm a collector of everything. I understand better do it while I keep everything, but can you offer any solutions? My house is filling up and I don't want to be a guest on the TVC hoarders buried alive.
I missed one part of the question. She's a collector and she collects everything and she wants help with which part? I missed that.
Well, basically what to do. I mean, I'm guessing she's saying to stop keeping so much stuff because she's saying she doesn't want to end up being on a hoarders TV show.
Well, here's a question to ask yourself is, I don't know if you have children at home, but one thing that helps me is I'll ask myself, do I really want my child to go through all my crap when I'm gone? And that helps me.
Boy, that very thing helped me so much because I had to move my mother several times, and yeah, that was an eye-opener. Yep.
And if you don't have children, it could be your partner, your spouse, it could be a sibling, anybody. Do I really want them to take this on? And then I know that there's this book out, I forgot the name of The Art of Tidying Up or something.
Right, Marie Kondo.
Yeah. Some people with ADD say that's the worst book for them because they don't have time to hold and touch every single thing that they own, especially this collection. But you might start thinking about, is this thing really that important to have? Do I really want this in my life taking up my precious space and my mental energy? So it's really about, that. Or if you do have a real problem, major problem, you could have more going on than ADD. You could have some OCD tendencies, which would be maybe working with a therapist to help you with that, and also working with a professional organizer who can set up systems for, taking better charge of all the stuff that's in your house, putting it in certain places. But there's so many ideas for, if you go to the store and you see something that catches your eye, make it a promise to yourself that you will revisit that idea in 24 hours instead of buying it. So if you can make that pact with yourself.
That's a really good idea.
Yeah. Online shopping, the same thing. It's so easy to just click a button and buy something, but make that pact with yourself. In 24 hours, if I still really want it, then I'll go back and buy it.
Yeah, that's really smart. Because it just, as you say, it's so easy. Click with Amazon. Amazon, one click and the stuff's at your door the next day, whether really. Whew. Here's someone who says, are there ADHD women? She's asking, like her. She said she's so impacted or paralyzed by visual clutter that she's all the opposite. She's obsessive about having clean surfaces because she can't tolerate the visual clutter.
Absolutely.
I think that's...
And there's good things and bad things about that. The good thing is that you have a clutter-free house. The bad thing is it might be creating a tremendous amount of anxiety in you because you're upset with the visual clutter. So that can work up, anxiety of, I've got to put this away because it's making me crazy. So there's two sides to it, the good and the bad. So I would wonder if it's causing a problem or if it's a solution.
Interesting. I have an interesting question. I have, this person's a teacher, and I have hundreds of children and no seating chart. How in the world can I learn their names? To your point about forgetting names and it's really interesting.
That's a good question. Go ahead.
I was trying to answer it, and all I could think of was to sort of make some kind of a mnemonic about the person, the color of their hair, or I don't know, something that would trigger a memory. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know how teachers do it, to be honest with you. If you have hundreds of kids, I'm wondering if you can prompt the kids to say, hi, my name is Susie.
I don't know.
I don't know. That's a stumper. You got a stumper.
Yeah, it is. There must be a book somewhere on that. Ginger, I am blessed. Ginger, you are. My husband has done all the cooking ever since we met 20 years ago. Wow. Everyone should have a husband like that.
Yeah.
Cheryl says, she has a therapist who reminds her that paying a house cleaner is cheaper than paying a divorce lawyer. This is great. I think we do have a lot of people who are bonding with the same symptoms, and they're saying that on the. What about staying on task? Jody says whatever she starts to do, it doesn't feel right, and then she moves to something else. It's really hard for her to stay focused on what she started to do.
Okay, that's a very common problem. Again, it often means we're bored or we're distracted. So one of the things I talk about in my book is twinning, T-W-I-N-N-I-N-G. So let's say laundry is something that's horribly boring and we don't finish it, and then we have loads and loads of laundry in baskets all over the house. So one way to stay on task would be to twin it with another activity. So let's say every Monday you watch a show on TV at 8:30. You can take your laundry basket next to you, and while you're watching TV, do the laundry. So twinning it with another activity that you normally do can make it easier to stay on task. Moving on to another activity, would be like if you're in the kitchen and you want to clean the kitchen. So what I suggest is it can be overwhelming because again, that visual distractibility, you're getting bored. So one way to get through that is to just focus on, let's say, this faucet and work on forcing yourself to only look to the right or going clockwise from the faucet until you make, full swing around the kitchen. And that takes time. It's a habit. But if you can get yourself to do that, then you'll more likely stay on task. But the other part to that is not allowing yourself to leave the room. So you can have like a basket or a bag, things that belong in other rooms. Don't go into the other rooms. Stick it in the basket, and then when you're done, put the stuff away. But then I would also wonder if the person asking the question, is she getting optimal treatment? Because medication is really helpful for staying on task. Is she doing things
that's interesting.
the day, when the medication is worn off? Start timing things when you're medicated and doing better with your ADHD. So, finding what time of the day works best for these kinds of things.
Right. But I think the interesting thing about what you said about 8:30, twinning is also it's about scheduling, which I've seen often as a recommendation. If you don't have to decide every minute whether you're going to do laundry or not, you always do it Monday at 8:30, or that's helpful to avoid the decisions that come up all the time.
And write it down and put it in whatever planner you use. Don't rely on your memory. Don't rely on your attention span for sticking with something. Put it in that planner and get into the habit of looking at your planner throughout the day, not just in the morning.
Right.
Not just whatever.
How do you do that? How do you get yourself to look at it more often? Someone's asked that.
That's partly, a habit, like any habit that we need to, like brushing your teeth. How do we remember to brush your teeth? Well, as kids, we were told to do it. We had to have an external reminder. So for an adult, there might be some kind of a beeper or a reminder system until it does become a habit. So you might put on your iPhone, look at planner simply, and then put it in 5 times a day.
Ginger wants to recommend to everyone the Blick, B-L-I-K calendar app. She says it's both Android and iPhone. It's been incredible for her because it's visual. So, for example, her boys' basketball practice would show a picture of a basketball. A doctor's appointment shows a red cross. She said she can see what's coming up with just a glance at her home screen. She highly recommends. So, nice tip from Ginger.
Great.
Terry, we're running out of time. Very unfortunately. Is there any last word of advice that you would like to give to the almost 800 people who are listening in?
Yeah, buy stock and post it. But I'm just kidding. But just remember that your ADD doesn't define you. It's only part of you. That's my big message, is that we get so caught up in this, and that it's part of your neurobiology. It's not a death sentence, even though it can feel like that at times. And that to reframe who you are, that you're a woman with an ADD brain, and start to shift how you see the world and how you want the world to see you by really coming to that point of acceptance and starting to use strategies that we've talked about today, and when you read about it and go on to your webinars and websites, so that you can make life easier on yourself. So it's time, and if you can start right now, ladies, right in this moment, to break that mold where you've been trained to fit into and then instead becoming your real, true, authentic self instead of who you think you should be because of what other people have told you your whole life.
Thank you so much. Sonia says this was super helpful. Thank you so much. And a number of other people said, what a super great webinar from Krista. Such great information and validation from ADHD Life from Carla. So thank you, Terry. And everybody, don't forget Terry's books, Queens of Distraction, Survival Tips for Moms with ADHD, great books. Also check on the Attitude website, lots of information for women with ADHD. Coming up, webinars, February 2nd, Jeff Copper, Adults, How to Transform Your Boredom into Motivation, Engagement, and Action. Thomas Brown, the ADHD Executive Function Connection. Cindy Goldrich, How Mindset Impacts Learning on February 18. Ned Hollowell, Just Diagnosed, a step-by-step guide to adult ADHD diagnosis and treatment. And finally, a great duo on a parent's guide to executive function skills, March 10, Sarah Ward and Kristen Jacobson. So everyone, please check back with Attitude. And Terry Matlen, thank you so much for everything that you said today and all your work for women with ADHD.
Pleasure, and thank you for having me.